I was diagnosed with acute lymphocytic leukemia back in 2011, and I was 23 at the time. I am now currently 37. Praise God, I am not dead. Went through a lot of chemo, went through a lot of things. I was working at a local hospital, ironically, and just started to feel really bad. I worked night shift, transporting patients, and my back started to hurt really bad. I started to just kind of be nauseous every day. Basically stopped eating for a good long time, and one day I just woke up so nauseous and feeling pretty bad, and just didn't even go to work. I remember my mom coming upstairs, and I was basically just like over the toilet vomiting because I come to find out my mom took me to a local like quick care place, and they did some blood work, and then we lived probably 2 or 3 miles from there, and by the time we got home, the doctor who had seen me called my mom and said, drop what you're doing and go to the hospital, which was kind of scary because, you know, I was a perfectly healthy 23-year-old that, you know, working with my parents. You know, it wasn't anything weird about it. And lots of tests later, lots and lots of tests, about 3 months worth of tests. And finally, one of the doctors was just like, let's do a bone marrow biopsy. I think we've exhausted everything else. And they did. A week later, that same doctor brought me into his office and sat us down and said, good news, bad news. Good news is we know exactly what's wrong with you. The bad news is it's B-cell acute lymphocytic leukemia. And I was like, okay. Because at that point, you know, 3 months worth of tests and all that kind of stuff, I was just done. I was ready to figure out what it was, and then let's figure out how to make myself better. And he said, I want you at Vanderbilt at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning. And he actually gave us the option to go to Johns Hopkins in Arizona or to Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt was a heck of a lot closer, so that's where we went. And he said, okay, I want you there at 8 a.m. I'm admitting you. And went there. The next day, we were literally there at like 5 a.m. Met a doctor, super kind old man, and he was hilarious and made me feel better about the whole situation. But he was basically just like, hey, you know, you've got a good chance of survival. You're young, you're healthy. We know exactly what it is. We caught it early, you know, but this is going to suck. He's like, the next couple of months of your life are just going to be terrible. And I was like, can't be any worse than what I've gone through. And it was. I had so much chemo. Went through a lot. Had just a crazy experience. You know, I'm definitely grateful to God and grateful to my family, and just the stuff that happened during the whole event. Like our insurance called us and was just like, hey, we're sending you a credit card. You basically have unlimited money. You know, you and your family can eat and get gas and buy clothes on us. And they did. They sent us a credit card, and we had $75 a day, which was stacking, to which we were not expecting. That was a crazy thing because I mean, my parents, my dad made good money and my mom had her own business, and they made decent money, but we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars in medical bills and um, probably $1,000 a week just in travel and food, and we had to rent an apartment and all kind of stuff. And the insurance company just called me and was like, "Hey, we're taking care of all of it. Don't worry about it. You just get better." And I mean that was crazy. Uh, I had atrial fibrillation at one point, and they were going to go to shock me, and my mom felt like she needed to pray for me, and my sister was like, "Okay, let's pray for him," and they both jumped up and prayed for me, and as soon as they were done, the heart monitor went back to sinus rhythm, and the doctors walked in because they had scheduled me to get shocked, so I would go back into rhythm, into sinus rhythm, and they'd already scheduled it, like, we're coming to get me for it. And they walked in and I was in sinus rhythm. And it was just like, they were like, we've never seen that before. Literally, as soon as they were done praying, we looked at the monitor, and my sister, who was a nursing professor and still is, she was a nursing professor at the time, so she knew what she was looking at. She looked at the monitor and was like, "That's sinus rhythm." And I mean, obviously, we all started, praising and whatnot, because that was a huge miracle. It was just one thing after another. We had to stay at a place in Nashville called the Hope House, which is like a converted old hotel that the National Cancer Society, I think, is what it is. They own it, and so like you apply to get a room there, and there's a bunch of rules, like you can't eat in your room, no smells. Totally makes sense to me. But yeah, I was really sick. They had me on high dose prednisone. Actually, that's another one of the miracles. The prednisone that I forgot to say was, like, during the 3-month process of them trying to figure out what the problem was, the doctor that I had at the time thought I had a very rare disease called Lufgren's sarcoidosis. I'm sure I butchered that, but he was adamant that I had that. Well, the treatment for that is high-dose prednisone steroids. Well, the treatment for acute lymphocytic leukemia is high-dose prednisone steroids. So they were treating me for something they didn't know I had, thinking I had something else. And I wasn't getting better, but they had put the leukemia at bay. It turns out the reason that I was throwing up and whatnot was the leukemia had been pulling calcium out of my bones and dumping it into my bloodstream, and then my body was dumping that into like my intestines and my stomach and to get rid of it. And when they pulled my blood, my calcium level was 18. Again, not a doctor. My understanding is that's lethal. That's a heart-stopping level of calcium. Like, had I not gone in, I probably wouldn't have woken up the next morning. But I went through a lot of chemo, a lot of radiation, and the doctors were doing everything they could. They took my blood and they were like, we can't see it, but we got to send it in. They got the results back and they were like, it's still there. Like, there's still leukemia cells. The problem with leukemia cells is they replicate very, very quickly, and they were basically like, we've done everything we can. There's only one other option, and it's a bone marrow transplant. And they said that if they couldn't find a donor, or if the bone marrow transplant didn't take, I had about 3 months. And, just like you hear that on TV or whatever, and you're like, oh, that's terrible. But like when you hear it in real life, it's, oh, like, oh, okay, like literal 3 months. Like it's hard pill to swallow. Um, so another miracle. Um, they always test your immediate family first, just to see if there's a match, um, and it's usually not a good chance that like one of your siblings is going to be a match. They can't test your mom and dad, so they test your siblings, and then they'll go to like cousins and stuff like that. And so they asked my sisters if they were willing to get tested for it, and both my sisters were just like, absolutely, let's do it. Like, where do we go? Let's do it today. And they did. One of my sisters was a 50% match, and the other sister was a 100% match, which just doesn't happen. And so I don't really know what the matching criteria is, but they said your sister is a 100% match. Thing is, she's a very, very petite, blonde, blonde white lady, and that is there's apparently like a hierarchy of if you're doing a bone marrow transplant or trying to get bone marrow from somebody, like enough T cells, I think it's T cells, from the bone marrow, there is like a hierarchy of ethnicities and like male and female, male versus female, that will give you more generally. And I was told that the best option would be a very tall, large male of African descent is like the best possible. Like if you're looking for, because apparently something in the genetics causes the body to create a ton of T cells, and like I said, my sister was the worst possible ever. Like you just like a very petite, female of like a Caucasian female is just the worst for a bone marrow transplant. And so she went in and did the test, and it was 100% match. And they were like, "We're going to be lucky to get a bag of cells," because they give you like an IV bag almost, but it's like a blood, obviously a blood bag. But they try to pull as many bags as they can out of a person to give to the other person, because it takes a full bag to do the transplant. So prior to the transplant, I went in for full body radiation and targeted radiation, specifically to my bones, to kill off my bone marrow, basically because my bone marrow was creating faulty cells, and they wanted to kill that off. And then they give me the transplant, and God willing, her blood cells, her T cells, will start to create bone marrow in my body. That's the process, or as I understand it. So they went in, they gave her the shots that caused her body to start producing T cells. And T cells may not even be right, but that's what I'm remembering, the cells that you need to get out of the body. And they did that, and my understanding, her recollection of it was it's extremely painful, because it's basically like your body goes into overdrive creating cells. So you're super achy, and it's like having the worst flu you've ever had, like fever and chills and like super, super achy, don't want to move, don't want to eat. And she did that several days in a row. And they ended up getting, I want to say 3 bags out of her, which they were just absolutely floored with. It was enough that they were able to give me a full transplant and then freeze the rest of them in case something ever happened in the future. And they could also use those cells for anybody else that needed them. But the sheer amount of cells that they got out of her, I think they're T cells, that they got out of her was a miracle unto itself, because it was nuts. I was told that, you know, once my bone marrow was gone, they would give me the infusion, and I had about 10 days before I needed to start getting like blood infusions, because I would, you know, your body recycles blood cells and creates new ones, and I wasn't creating blood cells anymore, so I would start to lose that ability to transport oxygen and things, and so they would have to start giving me blood. But they did that. They gave me the infusion. I remember it was really funny, because like they gave me so much medication, like ibuprofen and Tylenol, and then some sort of like not like an anti-rejection, but like a anti-inflammation, kind of like Benadryl. And I couldn't go to sleep, because they were like, if you go to sleep, you'll stop breathing. And so my entire family is in this room with me doing this, and it's just like a drip, like an IV drip kind of bag situation. And I remember getting so frustrated, because I just wanted to go to sleep. And like my sister's sitting on the edge of the bed being like, wake up, wake up. Like it was really funny. I don't know, that was a funny part. They told me that it was going to take 100 days. And by 100 days, we would know whether I was fully grafted, whether her cells had taken hold and started to produce blood cells. And I can't remember the exact amount of days, but I want to say it was sub 40, like 38 days in-ish. My mom would remember, but I believe it was 38 days, and they did a test, and I was fully grafted at 38 days. Completely unheard of. My doctors were like, we don't understand how that's possible. This is crazy. They were like, you still have to stay around here. When they did the bone marrow transplant, I got another call from our insurance company, and they said, you know, you need somewhere to live. We're going to rent an apartment for you for the next 90 days. And it was a very nice apartment, like very expensive part of town. And they took care of everything. It was a huge, like 2-bedroom with a full, you know, everything we needed, completely free. And it was crazy. Just another God thing, another miracle. I started feeling a lot better around probably day 50. I felt like myself again. I had been on high-dose prednisone for so long. I went from somewhere around 170 pounds. At the time, you know, I was 23. I skateboarded every day, worked out. I was basically nothing but muscle. I went from that to like 240, 245. Just looked like I'd swallowed a basketball. Like my head was huge. We got some pictures. It's quite hilarious. Just one of those things you got to deal with, going through that. But yeah, it was just kind of a speed bump in the road, and something we had to get through, you know. Of course, the bone marrow transplant came with other things. You know, now I have what's called graft versus host disease, GVHD. Super fun. It's not. It's basically, again, not a doctor. My understanding of it is that her blood cells took over, which means her immune system also took over. So I have her blood and her immune system. And because it's her immune system and not mine, it thought that I was a foreign body. So it was trying to attack certain things in me. Of course, I was on prednisone, which alleviates that. I still have problems. My skin on my leg is my skin on my legs is what's known as hidebound. It's basically where it doesn't shrivel up, but my skin gets really tight, and so my muscles are compressed, and my ankles have extremely low amount of motion in them now. I don't produce tears anymore, so I have to wear scleral lenses, and you see me putting in eye drops every once in a while, just so I can see. All my teeth fell out because of radiation and my mouth being dry all the time because I wasn't producing saliva. Lot of different things. Now I have a full set of dentures. I'm 37. I have a full set of dentures, and the only drugs I've ever done is chemo. So I just it's still ongoing, but I'm not dead. I'm still alive. I praise God for that. It's difficult. I don't think it's never going to be easy ever again. But again, I'm alive. I have my health. I do have, that in my family and everything, and just came through it by the grace of God. So.